Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Priscilla Bowens and Dr. Kimberly Johnson Hatchett, Dr. Priscilla and Dr. Kim of
Hey,
MD plus D.V.M. And we are so excited to welcome you today to episode 3.
hello everybody. So today we're going to be talking about nutrition. Somebody has made an appearance. Is that Beignet? Oh, Beignet.
Yes, this is Beignet. This is our guinea pig. He wanted to make an appearance. He's actually named after a dessert out of New Orleans, Louisiana, but he's definitely one of the love of our kids' lives. And I just wanted him to kind of say hello to everybody to show you that we did have some pets around here. So here you go. You can take him back, my trusty assistant. So we,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
that is fitting that his name is Beignet, something that's not is delicious, but not the most healthy. So we're going to be talking about health and nutrition today, and we're going to have some folks on talking about pet health and human health. But we wanted to kind of lead off with some of our own stories and our own background. So, like, my parents are from the Midwest. My dad is the oldest of seven. My mom is the eighth of 10. She had 8 brothers, and her sister. So she grew up cooking for 10 people, including 8 men. So I was always around a lot of food. My mom never really adapted her cooking to fit our smaller family, and it was scrumptious food. But it was also, we grew up with a garden, we grew up with apple trees, we grew up eating a lot of green vegetables. Literally every dinner had something green in it. So I think that shaped and molded me in how I approached food, how I look at what a complete diet should be in my mind. So I think that how you grow up and how you're trained as a child kind of really focuses on where you look, how you look at food as an adult. Don't you think?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, Dr. Kim. I grew up in the Deep South in Mobile, Alabama, Southern Belle. And but the awesome thing about growing up in the Deep South is we grew up on the coast, so there was tons of fresh seafood, and it didn't cost a lot of money. So that was something we had a lot of fresh fish, shrimp, and things of that nature. But one thing that I always remember that my mom did, excuse me, is she would find roadside fruit and veggie stands, and we would get fresh fruits and vegetables from those stands. And I mean, we had our canned vegetables, some frozen vegetables. They were not microwavable back then. That is newer.
That's true.
But she made it a point to have those types of things in the home. I remember a bowl that would have fresh vegetables in it, and we would eat our apples, bananas, and oranges and things of that nature. So that really influenced me. And today I try to share that with my kids. I have two daughters, just like you, an 8-year old and a 2-year old. And we try to make it fun. Like I'll cook some kale chips, and I was shocked that the 2-year old ate them. But it's a really quick meal. Kale can kind of be, it's not as it may not taste as good just raw for some people. So using it in that way, I think has been really good. So yeah, I agree with you. Our childhood experiences shapes our view of food. And I know you mentioned one thing earlier when we were talking pre-show about sometimes in our communities, when we view cooking, it's like it's a family affair. It's
Right.
time to sit around and talk about food, and sometimes that may contribute to, sometimes we may overcook, or
Or
cook
and
extra
overeat.
and
And
and possibly overeat.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
you have to clean your plate. So there's no leaving food on the plate. So yeah, so that's something that I think has an underlying contributor to some of our health roles as a community.
Yep, and that can spill over to your pet too, because growing up, we had our first dogs. We had two chow chows, and sometimes you just, when you're eating food, you may throw your pet, whatever you're having, on your plate. There wasn't a lot of dog foods around that you could pick up from the store, so sometimes you would get that. Sometimes you would feed your pet whatever. But today we really want to focus on, not only feeding your pet a well balanced diet, but there may be some human foods that you can feed them, but within reason, because some of those foods out there are actually toxic to pets, like
Right.
grapes. So we're going to cover all that today, and I'm so excited about our special guest. But before we get to that, we have to do our disclaimer.
True. Let's do it.
As you all know, Dr. Kim and I are both doctors. She is a physician, a human physician. I'm an animal doctor, veterinarian. I'm also an attorney, so this is important for a number of reasons. But we just want to remind you that the opinions here today by ourselves and our special guests are not those of our employers, but they are our own personal opinion. And we always invite you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Did I get that right?
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Okay, so we're going to introduce our special guest. Oh, we're going to do our calls to action.
Okay, so our calls to action, we were going to do this first because we were doing it at the end, but we want to do it twice so you can really understand and focus on what we want you all to listen to when we're talking throughout the 45 minutes to an hour. So our first call to action is starting small. You want to change one thing. If you need to change something within your diet, change one thing and focus on that. Number two, you want to make sure that if you are on a weight loss journey, you start writing things down. There's lots of free apps out there for you and your pet if your pet needs to lose weight. So writing things down really is an eye opener for most people to really understand exactly how much or how little food you're eating. And then what was our third one?
Well, we can mention many, but one of them is get moving. So not just diet is really important, and when we say diet, we don't mean just going on a fad diet or anything like that. We mean making your nutrition a part of your lifestyle, and part of that lifestyle is also just to get moving, walking around. We talked about that last week or a couple of weeks ago when we talked about ticks and other disease and getting out into nature but trying to avoid some of the bugs that are out there waiting on you. We say you get moving. Yeah, get out there, walk, maybe do a little gardening when it's not as hot outside, but do those things. So
okay, so our special guest, so you want to go ahead, Dr. Priscilla, and introduce the first doctor of veterinary medicine?
Yes, so I will introduce on the D.V.M side, and we want to also encourage our viewers. We have our Instagram handles here on the Zoom call, but on our Zoom YouTube call. But we also want to encourage you to ask questions during the show. If you have a question about your pet, how much should I feed my pet? If you have a question about your diet, we would love for you to ask us, and especially our special guests who have special interest in nutrition. But on the veterinary side, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Callie Harris. She is a 2008 graduate of Tuskegee University, and she worked as a veterinarian. She did an internship, which is important after vet school. Not all vets do that, but she did an internship after veterinary school and then turned her focus to emergency and critical care medicine or pets, which is a woman after my own heart because I enjoyed the fast-paced lifestyle of emergency medicine. She did that for several years. And afterwards, in about 2016, she joined Purina Veterinary Diets. And she is the veterinary communications manager, and she helps veterinary teaching hospitals and provides technical services for Purina cell support. So we're so excited to have her. She has interest in nutrition, in emergency medicine. She also is married and has several pet fur babies at home. They're so cute. And she's also, fun fact, a ballroom dancer. So she has some wonderful videos that you can check out. But we're so excited to welcome her. And Dr. Kim, I'll let you introduce our next guest.
Our next guest is a really good friend of mine I grew up with in Kansas City. Her name is Dr. Contessa Metcalfe. She is someone that we've known each other for a very long time. And Dr. Contessa's been Dr. Contessa for, she's always been the person that most people know her as on TV. So her passion though, is preventative medicine. She has completed, once she finished medical school, she was actually an active duty Navy officer and was a flight surgeon, which is pretty, tough stuff, like jumping out of airplanes and doing things and in water and wild things with her squadron. But then she went back and did training in preventative and occupational health, and also has a master's in public health. So preventative medicine, public health are really important to her. And she's actually a fellow currently in addiction medicine. So she is doing that currently. And she's also on a show called Married to Medicine. If you all watch that, I think on Bravo. So she will be joining us here shortly. So there she is.
Hi. Did you say you think it's on Bravo?
Yeah, I think it's Bravo.
It's on Bravo.
Dr. Callie, hello.
Hey, guys.
Hi, thanks for having us. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
We're excited to have you. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. So we know that preventative medicine and preventative nutrition is both big things for both of you guys in your careers and in your life. So we wanted to focus on that today from the human standpoint and from the pet standpoint and animal standpoint. So because we're all, earthlings and we all have to be together.
Yes. On this planet together.
Right.
All of us, including our fur babies.
Yes. And that's why we're here now as opposed to being in person, because with COVID, and just as a reminder, everyone, SARS-CoV-2 started in animals and then jumped over to people. So it's really important. We always try to drive home the point how much MDs and D.V.Ms need to talk to one another because we're interconnected. And so again, with the coronavirus, that there's a lot of discussion going back and forth between the human and animal side. And just like Dr. Contessa, I have my master's in public health. So this is a big deal to me to be able to bring you guys on, and please share with us your insight on nutrition. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw out our first topic or question, which is, can nutrition, this goes for humans and pets, can nutrition help prevent and or treat disease? And Dr. Contessa, we're going to start with you if you don't mind.
Yes, I'm a big advocate of what's called lifestyle medicine. And it's actually an organization that people who are involved in medicine in any facet can become members of. And lifestyle medicine really promotes using food as medicine. There are a lot of people, a lot of clinicians, practitioners believe disease can completely be reversed, meaning diabetes, high blood pressure, by your diet completely. Yes. It's challenging in this American diet that we are, of course, immersed in because essentially the food pyramid that we have been taught our whole lives, so our whole generation has been definitely adversely affected by the way that we've been taught to eat. It really should kind of be upside down. We're taught that carb-heavy foods are the key to being thin and healthy, but it's actually the opposite. Especially the carbs, a lot of processed foods, those kind of things can actually increase our propensity for obesity, for essentially inflammation. And so absolutely. And a lot of diseases, the baseline of diseases is inflammation, and foods that are low inflammatory foods are the ones that are really the key to making sure that you stay in good health.
That's a good point, low inflammatory foods. And that's a great segue over to the pet side. Dr. Callie, can you share with us the information about how a diet may play a role in the management of disease in pets? And if that sounds similar with Dr. Contessa.
Yeah, if there's some similarities and then there's always a little bit of difference. And this is what's important as a veterinarian when I'm coaching my clients on the choices they make with what to feed their pets. The similarities are there, which hopefully we'll talk about a little bit later, but then there are some key differences too. What I always like to start off with my veterinary patients is that nutrition is the foundation to health, right? It's the center point. And so very similar to what Dr. Contessa said, you are truly what you eat. So when I'm looking at my patients, I put them in two broad categories. They're going to be my healthy pets, where I want them to be on a complete and balanced diet that's just going to help them just function normally throughout the day. And then my second category are going to be the ones who have specific health conditions that maybe just a change or an addition in nutrients can help complement or even manage some of their health challenges that they're undergoing. But nutrition is very important. And I think, again, that when you're talking about combining the two, humans as well as animals, I feel like a lot of times my pet parents try to match what they are feeding themselves to how they're feeding their pets. And again, there's a little bit of difference with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I've actually seen some owners in my practicing days that would come in, their pets had the same condition as they had, like hypothyroidism or things like that, or renal disease. And then they would be trying to compare diets. And how do you all feel about that in terms of diet wise and looking at supplements and things like that? And Dr. Kim, you definitely jump in.
So, like supplements from a disease treatment standpoint, I know in my field in neurology, I have a lot of patients who don't want to take a lot of prescription medications. So, for migraines, there's specific supplements that I give my patients and put them on for preventative. There's also specific supplements that I give them to abort their headaches. Even with a certain diet that is very popular nowadays, the keto diet all started from neurology in treating patients who had seizures. And putting them on the ketogenic diet was something that we did for kids specifically who were hard to treat seizures. We would put them on this ketogenic diet, and lo and behold, now everybody's putting themselves into ketosis. So it's a
What do you mean by that when you say people are putting themselves into ketosis? Because not all of our viewers may understand that.
So when we're saying we're putting you into ketosis. So the keto diet basically is a low carb, high fat diet, and it causes your body to burn it causes your body to not burn sugar, but you're actually burning fat. So it makes your urine spill what are called ketones. And so you use urine strips. People, it's not necessarily even a fad anymore. Some people live a keto life, like they never go out of ketosis, which I don't know if that's healthy or not, but they are very into that lifestyle. But anyway, so from a preventative standpoint, I think headaches, a lot of different things, blood pressure, like Dr. Contessa even said, blood pressure, diabetes, all those things can be treated with diet. But preventative medicine wise, what would be one of the big things that you think that we need to focus on, like Dr. Contessa?
Yeah. So, am I frozen?
A little bit.
Okay. I don't know what's happening with that. Let me turn it off and turn it back on. Oh, stupid.
Oh, there you are.
There you go.
There's
all right. So, well, you know what? So I think you actually made an excellent point when you were referring to the ketogenic diet. And if this keeps freezing, then I'm going to switch to my phone. So essentially the way that we are taught when it comes to like food in our diet, am I frozen again? This is not going to work. I'm gonna have to switch back to my phone. Let's table this and I'm gonna switch to my phone. Okay?
I would love to jump in though. I would love to jump in talking about keto diets. That's a great segue over into the animal side of things, because Dr. Kim, you brought up some excellent points as far as the ketogenic diets that were looked at for children with epilepsy, and that was a way to manage or help reduce seizures in kids. Well, over on the animal side, actually, there's been some significant studies that have been done on a very similarly comprised diet, but utilizing medium chain triglycerides instead of long chain triglycerides to also have that same effect in pets, or in dogs specifically, to increase this ketone body production to help manage those dogs with canine idiopathic epilepsy. And we took that from the initial studies that were done in children back in the 1920s. Yes. The scientist working on the veterinary side looked at that and saw the benefit of utilizing that additional fat source that can help transition over to ketone bodies to help those patients. And so Purina, actually, the company that I work for, they have a diet called NeuroCare that has a great study to support that. So
what they're finding now, there was a couple of studies that are being done for diabetics. And they're saying that the ketogenic diet also is lowering A1C, so much so that some of the endocrinologists that I work with are trying to get their dietitians to push the ketogenic diet for some of these patients who have hard to control diabetes. So it's even spilling over into that aspect of medicine as well. And I could see that, with pets being more obese, and pets get diabetes too, right? Dogs get diabetes.
Pets get it all. Yes.
Yeah, they all get diabetes.
So that you never know, Purina. So
if you're talking about obesity, this is some startling statistics for you. More than 50% of dogs, and Dr. Priscilla can probably attest to this by doing her own physical exams, more than 50% that typically come in are going to be considered overweight, and closer to 60% of cats are considered overweight. So obesity is a big issue on the veterinary side as well, but there's some great things out there to help with that.
I mean, it's mirroring what's happening in our country as far as people, if you think about, and all four of us are African-American women, it's startling, the facts of what is considered overweight and obese, and that it's, I think the last time I looked, it was like 70%.
75%. Yeah, 75%
Wow.
of Americans are either overweight or obese, and 1 in 3 children.
Wow. So it does match up on the veterinary side. And you brought up a good point about awareness or just even perception. That's the hardest part in the veterinary side. Like, it's really difficult to talk about obesity in our patients, especially if that patient comes in and their pet parent may also be challenged with that. So it makes it kind of a bit more of a sensitive topic. But I think that you're right, where it sometimes can mirror each other.
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to say, I'm sorry, we got frozen a little bit. So the ketogenic diet. So when people talk about the ketogenic diet, essentially what they're looking at is, in our regular diet is really grain and carb heavy, right? So we're talking about like 50 to 60% of our diet on the traditional, like USDA food pyramid, 50 to 60% are carbs, right? But in the ketogenic diet, 5% is carbs. And actually the vast majority, somewhere around like 75%, is healthy fats, and or just fat, period. Because we were taught basically growing up that fat is the devil, that fat leads to heart disease. And it's been challenging to work in medicine in kind of formal settings, meaning hospitals, clinics that are owned by, government or universities, because you have to kind of go with what the current mantra, what the norm is, even though when you start pulling the data, it doesn't really necessarily support eating a very carb heavy diet. And if you look at documentaries of Americans 50 years ago and Americans now, you'll see the vast majority of Americans 50 years ago, no matter what race, were not overweight. Yeah. And so what happened was we decided that this new USDA diet was the way to go, which was really carb heavy. And that actually promoted us eating more carbs, more processed foods, more sugars. And that itself is what led to the inflammation in our bodies, which leads to then heart disease, diabetes, et cetera, cancer, you name it. And seizures, hyperactivity in kids. Some people will even say some of the prevalence of mental illness, depression, anxiety, things like that can be tied to our diet. And so healthy fats really do a great job with keeping our blood sugar from having those big peaks and valleys. And so it's really not about, and people think about, that means you're just saying to eat all steaks. And, that's not what we're saying. We're talking about things like an avocado full of healthy fats, thinking outside of the norm when it comes to like dairy foods, like having like actual real butter, as opposed to eating all this, artificial things that are made in a factory. And so, if you think about our ancestors, they didn't have access to microwaves and shelves. And so what we did was really pretty much eat what was around us. And that is pretty much a ketogenic diet.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's really good. And I know we touched on this briefly as we're listening to the wonderful discussion about how we are what we eat. What about supplements? Because I know people are big into supplements, and this is not necessarily regulated by the FDA. I work in the legal profession. A lot of my work is on the regulatory side. So I've done some studies or looked at a lot of the laws and things out there about vitamins and things of that nature. And it's really a largely unregulated area.
Yeah.
You really have to be careful about what you pick up and put in your body. Now I know on the pet side, there's been a lot of discussion about if probiotics are good for dogs. And Dr. Callie, can you, and we can talk about this in people too, Dr. Dr. Callie, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I love talking probiotics. It's probably one of my favorite things, just because I think probiotics are amazing for humans. I mean, I take a probiotic myself, but then I even am more of a supporter of it on the veterinary side. But to your point, the supplements are I don't want to say they're poorly regulated. They don't have a lot of regulation. They're considered, it's a nutraceutical. So it's very different from a medication, even different from therapeutic diets, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. So that's why it's so important. What I coach my pet parents is to really investigate the manufacturer, whoever's producing those probiotics. Do they have studies to support it? Can they guarantee that those organisms are viable, not just on the shelf, But then once they make it through the pet, all the way from the oral, the rooter to the tutor is what I describe it. Like it's got to arrive alive in the colon. And so if you investigate, and really put forth that effort and engage with the manufacturers, you can get that information. But I love probiotics in my patients, not just for gut health, but for immune modulating activity. Yes. There are certain, depending on the type of probiotic you're using or the type of bacteria, there's been some really good information showing how it can reduce anxiety in canines. I love it for just overall just health in general. There's been some really good studies looking at it even for skin issues. So I think that the world is opening up more and really taking the microbiome a bit more seriously. So I encourage probiotic usage for sure.
Awesome. What do you think about that, Dr. Contessa?
I was going to say, Kim, she really, you tell me, because Kim is really you tell me, Kim, because I'm thinking about some of the things that she's discussed with me. So Kim, what do you think about that? Then I'll chime in.
So,
Dr. Kim, I'm sorry. I've known Kim since we were in middle school. So I'm sorry, Dr. Kim.
So I think, when you think about probiotics, and what you said with Dr. Callie was really good about, being very strategic about what you take and not just taking like the over the counter, whatever, run of the mill. I'm not going to mention name brands because I don't want to get in trouble. But really focusing on getting good quality probiotics. And I think once I really started taking my health more seriously, I started really researching and understanding what goes into my body. We are an N of one. We are one of one. That is it. We are a limited edition. We've got to do what we got to do to keep our edition going, right? So like the probiotics that we take are like refrigerated probiotics. Like we want to make sure, like you said, it arrives alive. So Dr. Contessa, that's all I'm going to say. I think I'm probiotic.
Oh, sorry.
I
was curious to your feeling about other supplements, though. What do you think about supplements in general? Because you were doing like some of the things that you put into your coffee, some things like that. What do you think?
Oh, like, well, you mean like I do put MCT oil sometimes in my coffee. I do take turmeric though. I also use turmeric as an anti-inflammatory on an everyday basis. So that is something, because I work out really hard. And I know that I can't work out the way that I work out and not take an anti-inflammatory, but I don't want a chemical in my body. And I know that turmeric, from what I've studied and what I've read, is a great anti-inflammatory. And it's a good, I don't use enough of it in my actual diet because I'm not, that great of a cook, but I do take a good turmeric supplement, and I have done my research on it. So, yeah.
And that can be challenging for a lot of people because this show is meant for everyone. And right. So we want, if you're living in an apartment in New York City, to somewhere down south, to the, West Coast or wherever, we want to talk about what may be relevant for you. So we know people are working and right in the coronavirus pandemic. So people are, their mental health is important. So what are some natural things, natural supplements, like as far as what type of, say, human foods can pets eat, Dr. Callie? And then Dr. Contessa, can you touch on how we can incorporate vitamins into our diet naturally? Can you guys touch on that for us, please?
Yeah, so if we're talking human foods, as far as just in addition, because that's also another conversation as far as like home cooked food versus commercially extruded or manufactured food. But if we're talking along the whole lines of just supplements, what can I supplement my pet's diet with that's still going to be nutritious for them and not going to rock the boat and not be toxic? There are, many vegetables and fruits that I'll often recommend. So I really like blueberries because of the antioxidant component to it, vitamin C, vitamin E in there, peaches, but just remember to remove the pit, if you're going to give it to your dog. Yeah. Strawberries, you can cut off the tops and give that. Mangoes, if you can believe that, you can also feed to your dog. And so you're just thinking about all of these really great sources of vitamin C, vitamin A. And so I think those are great ways to supplement. And then when you're thinking about other ingredients or other things off of your plate, I'm a big supporter of sweet potato in moderation. I just think it's tasty and it's a good fiber source. Yeah. I think green beans, I think anything green, broccoli is really helpful. some things that you might want to avoid in the kitchen would be like onions, garlic.
Why is that?
So onions and, what toxicologists typically will say is that anything has the potential to be toxic, right? It's just all dependent on the dose. And so that's kind of what I think about with onions and garlic, because there's going to be varying amounts of doses, and it's going to be dependent on the size of your pet as far as what's going to display these clinical symptoms. I say just avoid it completely. So with onions and garlic, it can have some issues with the GI system. So it can cause GI or gastrointestinal stress. So cause some stomach upset. It can also affect them hemodynamically. So it can, you can see red blood cell destruction. You can see anemia with garlic or with onions. Then Dr. Priscilla mentioned grapes. That's a big no-no. Grapes and raisins, even though I love eating them, we should not be feeding them to Fido because it can impact their kidneys. Chocolate. Oh my God, as an emergency vet, that was like probably the number one toxicity that we treated was chocolate toxicity, usually around Halloween, right?
Or Christmas. My beagle ate a plate full of fudge.
Or Christmas, but and just depending on the type of chocolate, whether it's milk chocolate versus baker's chocolate, it's all gonna have varying levels of significance, but I say just avoid it. But that's to name a few. I could go on.
Let me see. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
So sorry. Okay. So again, I'm a really big advocate of leafy green vegetables. And in this little kind of this chopped salad kit, broccoli, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, pepitas, radicchio, and cranberries. Okay. The cranberries I will probably keep out because that's really processed. There's no such thing as a fruit called cranberry So essentially, if you look at the color, what I like about this bag is it's really colorful. And then as far as even just some fresh options, these are different like herbs, mint in particular. And I think radishes actually are fantastic thing to snack on. They're delicious. These are olives. Those are great. And this is essentially, I went to a Mediterranean restaurant and this is kind of what they give you as far as like kind of your appetizer and walnuts. And so if I like visuals. And so if you think about it, all these things, when you look at them, you can tell where they came from, right?
Yes.
Anything that's kind of above the ground, they're not processed. So I don't have to figure out like what this is, like what it started as. So it should essentially look like how it started. So when you talk about like a berry, people are like, what do you mean like fruit juice? No. A berry, like a raspberry, blackberry. Blueberries are fantastic. I love tomatoes because tomatoes are actually good. They're full of lycopene, especially if you heat them a little bit, and that actually improves your eye health. And Black people in particular have an issue with, their eye health. And so that's really important to make sure your diet is full of things like lycopene. So remember kale. If you don't really like kale, greens are fantastic, but don't overcook them. Right. I mean, for the most part, again, this wasn't cooked. This is all fresh stuff, right? These are fresh. They're meant to be eaten exactly as is. There is actually cabbage in here. And we know how we love our cabbage. But when you overcook it, you just actually put all the nutrients in the water that you poured off. Right. And so do as much as you can. Fresh is best. Frozen will do. But cook it very, very lightly. If you can add a little bit of, like Kim was saying, like MCT oil or certain types of like olive oils or and things like that, if you're going to like kind of cook food, but it really shouldn't be cooking for hours and hours on end because that essentially removes all the nutrients from it. Right. And those kind of things actually give you the nutrients that you need to help improve your mood, to help actually make you feel full faster and stay full longer. And processed foods in particular, which people are always like into like pastries and donuts and cakes. But when you eat candy and things like that, you find that you're kind of insatiable. Yeah. You can eat a whole box of Skittles or, when I say a box, I mean like the movie theater box. How can you eat? And that's like 600 calories if you look at it. How can you do that? Because you essentially don't have that full factor kicking into place because your body didn't even used to this processed thing. It doesn't even know what it is. Right. But when you naturally eat like seeds and berries and nuts, it makes you feel full faster. And so even though this may be a little bit more calorie dense, you end up over the day eating less than the 2,000 calories or so that you're allotted, unless you're trying to lose weight. And then you need to actually lessen that to like 1,500, or some people you need 1,200.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Dr. Contessa? Because
Sure.
I will admit that I love fresh green veggies. Dr. Kim and I were talking about that right before you guys came on, and I made kale chips for my kids because they won't eat it otherwise. But what about when you're walking through the store, everybody's wearing a mask, and you see like you showed a great example, which I love, of the salad bags.
That's one of my favorites.
People grab bunches of salad, bunches of these fresh vegetables that they see, and fruits. Do we need to be concerned about coronavirus? Like, because people are saying that it can spread, contact based. And I will admit, before I did my research, I was a little cautious about picking these things up. Should we, what are your thoughts on that? Can you share that with some people who may be a little cautious about doing that?
Absolutely. And I think rinsing your foods is always a good idea. I mean, my mom used to use lemon juice. And so I kind of still always use like a little bit of lemon juice. There are fruit and vegetable washes at the grocery store that you can buy at Sprouts and just the regular Kroger's, Aldi's, you name it.
Yeah.
Price Chopper, wherever it is that you live, whatever the chains are. But you can make your own. You can go on remedy recipes to wash your fruits and vegetables to essentially, if it's something that doesn't have a skin on it, like a banana, then you really should be washing it, and an apple included, grapes. I think it's the good thing about coronavirus is people kind of sampling things in the store. That wasn't a good idea in the first place, because it's been in trucks, factories, on the floor, off the floor, picked up, thrown back down, put back up. I mean, that's just not a good idea. So I think you should be washing things that are, before you eat them anyway. But as far as the washes, I can't really advocate for any specific brand, but we do always wash our food. And that's kind of a good practice, despite whether it's fruits, vegetables, whether it's meats, anything that you put in your mouth, pretty much you should be washing it before.
I think
Kim, do you use this?
I was going to say, I use vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and water. I have a mix for that, and let things soak, and it actually keeps things longer. So like my kids, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old who live on strawberries. And so to keep them longer, we wash them in this like apple cider vinegar water mix, and then let them air dry and then repackage them, and they last a lot longer. But in general, we try to wash things just tremendously. But then the other thing that you want to think about is from a virus standpoint, how can our diet, what we need to think, because we're still in the first wave. I mean, you guys are down in Atlanta. I'm in Kansas City. You're in Texas. So we're in the midst of all of this madness. What can we be doing to protect ourselves from a diet standpoint to get our immune systems up and running? Like we've talked about probiotics. What else should we be doing to get our bodies ready?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I mean, like you guys talked about before, Dr. Kim, Dr. Contessa, your body is your weapon. And there's new research out by Nature or Science magazine depicting how SARS-CoV-2 can attack different components in the cell system to disrupt your immune defense. So you have to get this immune defense up and keep it up. We're not saying that's going to prevent the disease by any stretch, but keeping, and it's difficult. Again, we have mental health issues and just a lot, people aren't able to get around folks like they used to, but, let's talk about that a little bit more. What else? Is there anything else we can be doing, or everything you mentioned, is that pretty much, and with dogs too, because Dr. Callie, we've had pets that have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and it's highly likely that they got it from their owners.
Right. I mean, what I would comment on that is not necessarily from a nutrition standpoint, but more just from a biosecurity standpoint. And this is something that I think is really important as all of us are trying to avoid catching COVID-19 if we can. But if you do, and hopefully, the human doctors have given us some really good information on how to support our immune system. But if you do catch it, then it's important for you to also consider your pets in the household. And so quarantining is important, right? And so I've seen a lot of just Facebook posts or just social media posts of people who may have been sick, and then they're taking pictures with their dog or their cat. And I'm like, let's not do that, because even though it's not really affecting our animals in as large of a number as we're seeing with humans, because we've had a few cases that have popped up, just in the United States, but then also not mentioning a few cases that have taken place overseas, it's just best to err on the side of caution. And if you do come down with those symptoms and you're unsure if it's COVID-19 or not, then you really need to quarantine yourself from everybody in the family, including your pets.
Well, and even think about it from a transmission standpoint, because unless you're keeping the dog with you the whole time you're in quarantine, if somebody's got to take the dog out to somebody's got to feed the dog, unless you're doing all of that while you're on quarantine and sick, I doubt it, then the dog or cat could, theoretically, if you think about it, transmit it to some of your family members that they're around if they're going in between you and, I mean, could that actually happen?
We're not seeing it. So that's the thing. Think about the numbers of people who have been diagnosed with COVID. And then there's probably an even greater number of people that have not been diagnosed with COVID-19, but definitely have it. We're not seeing that number in the veterinary side match the number on the human side. So I definitely want to take a moment, and I don't want to create panic associated with this, with the veterinary side or with our pets, but it's just the right thing to do is if you are diagnosed, you come down with symptoms and you're concerned, then just make sure your pets are not, sharing the pillow with you. Okay. And to your point, Dr. Kim, too, having another family member or a friend, being able to feed your pet, walk them outside, all of that is just trying to help alleviate any type of cross-contamination or keep everything secure.
I agree. It can be a challenge, but I agree.
There's so much to consider.
I have a question from a viewer that I just got a text in, and they're asking if we could go over again and expound a little bit how we can enhance our immune system to help fight against the development of disease and maybe COVID in general. And I know Dr. Contessa, you gave us great visuals. I was talking about that on our YouTube comments, and we have some people typing back in. But in addition to antioxidants, blueberries, some of the supplements we talked about, is there anything else that we know of that can help build our immune system, or is it just a lot of the general facts that you've gone over?
Yeah, so I mean, in addition to that, drink water, right? Drink lots and lots of water. Stay hydrated. Keep your body, make your body a machine. So start doing 150 minutes of aerobic exercise a week. Right. And what that means is you should be winded when you're doing some exercise. So if you're just kind of walking casually and you can still kind of be on the phone, then you're not walking fast enough. So walking is fine. Just make sure that you're getting your heart rate up. I'm actually eating or drinking right now. I was drinking a smoothie that I essentially, because in order for me to get all the kale and all the vegetables that I want, I usually, first and foremost, I'll usually for breakfast, or I'll replace one meal with something liquid. And so I do my best to put as many veggies, like kale, spinach, things like that in my smoothie, and I mix it. Some people don't advocate mixing things, but I do. I mix it with some fruit. People want to make it real complicated. I know they really want to. They want to be able to, go online and find a magic potion or some supplement that people are selling. And again, I always say I don't knock people's hustle. But the best thing that you can do is go back to what our ancestors had. And that's how you kind of prevent. So just keep food real clean. That doesn't mean that, some people, again, I really believe in a plant-based diet as well. But a lot of times, especially even with keto, that's not a vegetarian diet. It actually is just really whole foods, real foods. Stay away from boxes. Stay away from anything that can sustain on the shelf for years, months or years. That probably doesn't have any nutritional value for you. And so some of the things that we've been finding that has been making people have poor outcomes is when people are obese, which again, we just talked about. Unfortunately, 7% of Americans are overweight or obese. When people are, unfortunately, if they're smokers, they're having worse outcomes. And so do your best to keep the stuff that's toxic out of your body. Things that are causing inflammation to your body. Limit alcohol. Don't do too much alcohol ingestion. Don't kind of keep binging. As far as if you're using a lot of drugs that can hurt you. And I'm not talking about marijuana, unfortunately. There's not really been a big tie to that. But if you're doing some illicit drugs, then you should stop. All those things that are making your body less likely to fight, then you're making it weaker and not stronger. because you naturally have the ability to fight usually illness. But if your body isn't working at the optimal level, then you're not helping yourself. And so I don't know how to make it any more complicated. There's nothing on the internet that you can buy that's a magic pill, because I promise you, all the hospitals, doctors in the world will tell you, we want people, we see people who are sick and they are struggling. And I would spend my own money to buy something off the internet if I can give them some echinacea that would make them all better. I would do it myself. So no, there isn't a magic pill. The best thing to do is to avoid getting sick by wearing a mask, staying away from big crowds. And when you are eating and when you're making choices about what you're going to put into your body, whether it be food or some other a substance, just think about, is this making me better and stronger and more like Popeye, or is this something that's going to make me less likely if, it all went down right now? Like if it came, could you run? Like if you needed to do fight or flight, were you able to run? If this is going to slow you down, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. If you feel sluggish or lethargic after you have it, that's something that you should be avoiding, because you never know when you're going to be impacted by an illness. And so whatever you can do to keep your body at like its fighting weight, its fighting stance, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's important on the pet side. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On the pet side too, I just want to make this point, just in case there are some pet enthusiasts that are out there and watching this, that I love all this information that's coming from the human side as far as eating whole foods and avoiding processed foods. And that is definitely a trend that has become a bit of a topic in the veterinary side of things, because people are following the trends for themselves. So they want to say, okay, if I'm feeding myself whole foods, which are great, should I also be doing this for my pet? And from the veterinary side, I always have to encourage my neighbors, my friends, my family members, and my clients, right? That, we are not large dogs and dogs aren't small humans. That the metabolism amongst the species are very different. How we process and utilize nutrients are very different. And so when I hear the, processed food, why that may be considered a little bit of a bad, terminology on the human side, for the veterinary side, it's completely different. When I hear processed, I think commercially extruded food. There's a team of experts, food scientists, quality assurance people who are involved, veterinary nutritionists that are involved to make sure that this food that shows up in a can or in a bag is complete and balanced and is intended to manage whatever it is that you're trying to manage with your pets. And so this is something that comes up often in my exam room. So I just want to make sure that people are very clear that, follow the instructions of the Dr. Contessa, Dr. Kim regarding yourself. But when it comes to your animals, to your pets, leave the hard work to the people who work in the pet food industry, to the scientists, to the experts, to the researchers who've been able to come up with a formula that is intended to really manage our patients and really extend their lives.
I mean, I think if you think about it like from a human standpoint, what you just said is kind of what the industry is doing with these prepackaged meals that are like, I'm not going to mention any names, but they're like keto meals or they're plant-based meals. And they take the guesswork out because a scientist has sat back and said, this is exactly the portion they're supposed to have. And so that could be kind of equivalent to what you're saying from the pet side on the human side. For us, we're trying to tell our patients, this is what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have the means, the easiest way to do it is to do one of those programs that just basically takes all the guesswork out of it for you. But the vast majority of us can't afford that. And so we have to give them real tools. And what Dr. Contessa is saying is good, because she even said fresh is best, but frozen is just as good if you can't afford fresh. And so frozen food is picked at the peak of its freshness and then frozen. And so you can use that from a budget standpoint, because a lot of our patients are on budgets. Using that in your diet also is something that you can do on a daily basis. From a serving standpoint, how many servings should we go for on a daily basis? Go.
I think and before you guys answer, it depends on your diet. I mean, your condition too.
Yes.
Because I've self-professed this on our first show, so I don't have a problem disclosing this. I have hypertension. A large part is due to genetics, but it's also due to stress. at work, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. But that just, it comes with the job. When you're a physician, a veterinarian, a lawyer, whatever you're doing, wherever you work is probably stressful. So, but I do have hypertension, so I've been not bombarded, but told that I should definitely look at the DASH diet, and that has certain servings that are recommended of vegetables and carbs, healthy, good carbs like whole grains and things like that. So I do want to say it does depend on the diet, on whatever you're recommended based on where you are in terms of your overall health. So if you guys want to take it from there, and then we have a couple more questions, and then we'll close out. So anybody?
I mean, from a serving size with pets, especially if we want to make sure that we're not overfeeding and that they're getting all the required essential nutrients, then I always say start with what is recommended by the individual manufacturer. Obviously I can speak a little bit more intimately to Purina, but there's some other companies that are out there too that produce some really good diet options. And so you just want to follow the individual manufacturer's recommendations as far as serving size or how many cups or how many cans to feed. You don't want to overfeed. That's the biggest thing. Like I already quoted, the statistics with my patients, 50-60% between cats and dogs. That's too many. 1 out of 2 patients coming to see me should not be considered overweight or obese. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And so a part of it is overfeeding, overtreating,
hungry,
overloving, but to feed is to love, right? Yeah. But I say to walk is to love too. And, there's been some really good studies to show that if you truly love your pet, and I'm not saying that anybody out there doesn't love their pet, so understand me when I say this, but if you want to spend more time with your pet, there's been some really good evidence showing that if you keep them at an ideal body weight, ideal body conditioning score, then that's more of an opportunity for you to keep loving on that animal. And so feeding them at the appropriate amounts is going to be key.
And can I just say this real quick? I know some people that feed their pets like once a day, or they've been told to feed once a day. Yeah. But when you think about it, if you ate once a day, wouldn't you be hungry?
I say split that meal up. Go with what's recommended on the back, because like most bags or cans of mass-produced food, they're going to give you however many cups, however many cans, per day based upon the weight of that pet. And so I say split it up. You can do 2 meals. For some of my younger guys, I'll say maybe even increase it to 3 meals. For my smaller breeds, I'll say 3 meals. I mean, so you have a little bit of fluidity to make some decisions with that. But I agree. I don't want to be fed once a day. So I think at least twice a day is appropriate.
Yeah.
So when it comes to eating and talking about portion sizes and serving sizes, so again, going back to this bag, I like to use examples. So people are like, oh, it's salads. Well, it's probably okay. Well, on here, it tells me that there's 1 serving is 200 calories, and that's including the dressing that's included. But this bag is actually 3.5 servings, right? And so what that means is that 2, 4, 6, 700 calories. This bag is actually 700 calories, and they consider this to be 3 servings. And they're calling a serving size a cup. And so, especially for someone who's trying to lose weight, or someone who's trying to get to a healthy weight, or just figure out, again, listening to their body. Because I think the hardest thing is when people get into this mindset of dieting is thinking that everything has to be so regimented and challenging. Well, one, you have to start listening to your body. Your body naturally has a gland in an organ in your brain that tells you when you're full. Right. And we naturally can overcome that organ, and we overfeed ourselves just like we overfeed our pets. Really? And so this whole concept, if there is one takeaway I can tell people, is only eat when you're hungry and do not eat when you're not, and stop eating when you're full. Listen to your body. And if you can do one thing that will just show that you love your kids, is to stop forcing them to eat everything on their plate. Oh. That is the wrong thing to teach anybody. It's not true. It's not good for kids. It's not true for adults. These kids, I remember my sister-in-law used to tell me when my kids were little, because I'm a new mom, I don't know what I'm doing. She say, those kids are not going to starve. And it's true. It's absolutely true. Whether it's a baby to my now 6-year-old, they will tell you when they're hungry, right? We are supposed to be, let's say, for instance, we're supposed to sleep 8 hours a day, right?
So we're only up for 16 hours. And those 16 hours is the amount of time that we're supposed to sustain our energy, right? So you basically, if you think about it, you know, let's say, for instance, you're eating in 16 hours, 2,000 calories. Do the math, right? Should you really sit down and eat 2,000 calories for breakfast and then, you know, or worse, eat 2,000 calories for dinner and then you go to sleep?
Yes.
Right? So essentially, oh God, I thought I had I'm sorry. So essentially what you really have to do is pay a lot of attention to your body and not overeat. Write down things that you're eating, keep track of how much you're eating, do it for 1 week. Weigh yourself every day, every single day, and you will find that for certain, and then also do a diary of how you feel after you ate something. And that will teach you actually to go towards one diet versus another. And you'll probably find yourself finding that you don't like the way you feel after you eat a lot of processed foods. And then if you weigh yourself and on those days when you're eating a lot of processed foods and then you've tracked your feeling, you will find I ate too many calories, right? I ate probably when I wasn't hungry, I overate, and I even gained some weight. And it teaches you again, I actually was full when I took 2 or 3 bites. I was satisfied. Mm-hmm. Do a diary. And it sounds really strange, but we have been taught to do exactly the opposite. So if you don't start doing that now, you forever and always will probably be a person who struggles with their weight and even health problems like diabetes and hypertension.
Yes.
I think that's the way to end it.
I mean, call to actions, but she just said.
What I'm saying. She just said. So we're gonna do our call to action. Then we'll talk about our shirts real quick. But Kim is my cousin, so she knows I like to be on time, whether we begin or end it. So call to action, just like Dr. Contessa said, keep a journal, write it down. You can do that for your pet too, especially if you're working on weight loss for your pet.
Yes, we love journals.
Yes, write it down. What did you feed your cat or your dog that morning? Did they get that extra scrambled egg? Did they did you give them some salmon in the afternoon? Like what did you feed them? What did you feed yourself? And I've been doing that lately. I am on a certain diet. I won't name what it is. But I am trying to do a better job of tracking my water too, my water intake as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because we should probably be drinking at least half of our body weight. Is that right? If we're trying to
half your body weight in water is what you need to be aiming for.
Yeah.
Unless you're exercising, then you need to do a little bit more.
You need to drink more. So do that. And what's our other call to action, Dr. Kim? We said keep a journal for you and your pet. Change one thing. Yep. Change one thing. If it's adding in those vegetables in there, green leafy vegetables, if it's measuring your pet's food out, because a lot of people take the big red cup or the huge plastic cup that they get.
One cup is not a red Solo cup.
Yeah. That's actually like 16 or 18 ounces.
You need a measuring cup. So that's the biggest tip, is to go and invest in a measuring cup dedicated to your pet.
Yeah, a measuring cup. And for yourself too, I actually just ordered a food scale for myself so I can measure out if I'm having 2 to 4 ounces of fish or of chicken or something like that. So I can know if I'm getting those serving sizes like Dr. Contessa just talked to us about. And our last thing is get moving. Get moving. Dr. Contessa's walking around. Get those steps in the house. Get them in the house. You don't have to go outside if it's too hot. It's hot in Texas. It's like 100 degrees outside. So get those. You have step counters on your phones. Mine came with one. You don't have to. I mean, I have a Fitbit too, but you don't have to have that just to get you to count your steps. There are free apps to track your food, count your steps, do your journals, everything. So we really want to encourage that. And Dr. Kim, you want to close us out?
Well, we can close out. One thing that we kind of do on an ending basis is we always wear these shirts. We wear like shirts underneath our coat. And so I know that Dr. Priscilla, your shirt is near and dear to your heart about kidney health and kidney love and loving your kidneys. Can you tell us about that?
So real briefly, I had an older sister who since passed, but she had renal failure. And I did a lot of work with the National Kidney Foundation several years ago, assisting with their marches and raising money. So a lot of people who have renal disease for whatever reason have to eat certain diets. And so this shirt is just a reminder to love your kidneys. And it's also a throwback and reminder to my sister as well. So her name was Ann Michelle, and I love her.
Ann Michelle. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Callie, I know you didn't wear your shirt, but you have a shirt. And it's pretty.
Yes, I do. So this one, as we're ending the talk, is just remember that pet food is sexy, actually, and so I feel sexy when I wear this shirt, and I want you to feel sexy when you're feeding your pet food from a reputable company. So pet food is sexy.
All right, Dr. Contessa, do you have your shirt?
I do. And my shirt says, get used to different. As an African-American woman and with a Black family, in an American society, all these things we just talked about today, if you choose to adopt them, you're going to be you're going to be hit with a lot of resistance because it really kind of, flies in the face of the way that we're taught to approach food. Like being neurotic about your food is bad, right? Being neurotic about what you put into your body and kind of doing too much. You doing too much. You have to, because diabetes, heart disease, living a sick life is actually really, really common.
Right.
That's common. That's what everybody who we know, for Black people, again, high blood pressure, diabetes, common, cancer, common. So you get used to being different. You get used to living that healthy life and being so persistent about it that people remember the impact, like they remember you. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you'll probably save a life by doing that. And if that life is only your own, then God bless you.
All right. And I'll end out, my shirt's not that serious or that sexy, but it's a shirt with Nkoye from the Black Panthers on. And the reason why I got this shirt when I decided, okay, I'm going to get a Marvels t-shirt, is because of who she was in the movie. She was a strong woman who was athletic, was intelligent, and just unbelievable. Uh-oh, here comes somebody. I hear it here. Don't do it.
We're ending, so you're good.
Okay, it was my 5-year-old running past me. I think she had to go to the bathroom. But that's the reason why I got this shirt. And I thought, I'm going to wear it because all of you guys represent a strong aspect of life, and something that I admire in all three of you guys. So that's the reason I wore it in homage to you guys. So I feel really blessed to be here, and I feel really blessed to know you guys. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and end. Thank you so much to our guest. This is episode 3. We hope that you follow us on our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and as well subscribe to our YouTube page, which is MD plus D.V.M. This is Dr. Kim and Dr. Priscilla, along with Dr. Contessa and Dr. Callie. We thank you so much for this, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.